And so I would like to welcome Alan and Neal from Soulive. Very excited to have them here on the Jazz Real Book. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here. I've enjoyed your music for quite some time, as I know a lot of my listeners have as well. And really excited to hear that you have a new album and a new single coming out. Could we maybe start with you discussing that?
Well,
Sure. Yeah, new album dropped or is coming out soon. Yeah, which we it was kind of like a unexpected situation in a way. We weren't really planning on we didn't have a album plan to record, but we were asked to play a festival in Crested Butte this coming in and actually at the end of this month. But we were asked months last year. So anyway, the guys who run the festival, I'm quite familiar with because they also run the studio in Iceland, Floki Studios. And I'd been there, a few times recording other people. So when they asked us, I was like, well, that'd be pretty amazing if we could like record an album for them and release it at the festival. So we just kind of, I just kind of threw it at my wife who manages us and kind of threw a little bit of a Hail Mary, and they were psyched with it. So we ended up in Iceland, recording a new album.
It's wild. So I mean, why I like did you know a studio in Iceland already, or it's just
Well, yeah. So the studio in Iceland, Floki Studios, I had been there three times before. I did the first time I was there was recording an album for our friend Oteil Burbridge.
sure.
So that was his last album, Lovely View of Heaven. Then I went back a few months later to record an album for Mono Neon. And then I was there again, recording another album for Oteil and Lamar Williams Jr., which is actually coming out this May 1st. So I'd had a relationship with the people who own the place, run the place, and they're just really great people, huge fans of music and just supporters of what we all do. So
Mhm. Yeah, and this is back to the organ trio. It's the three of you guys on this record. I think there's one track with vocals, if I'm not mistaken.
right, yeah, we had Van Hunt sing on a song, but yeah, it's just kind of like just back to the basics. Well, I guess, but to be honest, our past few recordings have really just been us.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like that organ trio. Well, first of all, for the record, which I got a copy of, it sounds great. In terms of
thank
like
you.
writing material or crafting these songs, how do you guys generally go about doing that?
It, well, it's kind of interesting because I think probably in for every album, there's been a different process, and I think a lot of it's just been over the years, like the early albums, like we were all living together, and then then we're not living together, but then sometimes we would get together to like write for the album, and so I think that's kind of always dictated the process of how we worked on tunes. And obviously that is a lot has changed over the years, just that like now everyone has like studios, in the big early days of So Live, like right out of the
Mhm.
like we there was like one studio and like Al was recording everything, but now like we everyone has their production studio. So the and for every album it's always different, like who like someone just may have more ideas, or maybe we're working on tunes together. Like literally I probably every album has been a completely different process of how we did it, but it just happened that this one, well, Al, you can tell them about like working with the 4 track. because that
Yeah.
was like that kind of set the tone for like all the tunes that you brought to the session.
Right. Yeah. So, so it's kind of funny. I was like, oh, cool. I threw that idea out there. And then they were like, all right, awesome. We're be happy to bring you guys over here to record an album. And then I'm like, wow, we don't have any music. Okay. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. We definitely had one song,
Right.
Oh,
East Side, that it was a new Soul Live tune that we had been playing for what the past year, I guess,
Yep.
of
Yep.
Neil wrote. So anyways, I'm sitting here in the studio and I'm like, wow, okay, we need some songs. And I had recently got into recording with my 4 track back here, this
oh, wow.
Tascam 464.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I got it actually for an album that I was mixing for Ella Feingold. But because she had been kind of went back to the 4 track, so I picked that up in case we needed to transfer any kind of thing, and I had just really gotten into the groove of I just got back into using the 4 track. So what happened at the end of the day when I was done mixing or mastering here, I would just like plug in my guitar or bass or whatever, and
Mhm.
I just and start coming up with ideas, and I just all of a sudden I just got inspired and I came up with I don't know how many ideas I came up with that ended up on the album, but quite a
There were a
few, I
lot,
think.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
there
a
were a lot.
lot. Um, and it was just out of for me a lot of times writing, and this has been a long time with Soul Live. It's always like, wow, we have something coming up. There's like a kind of a deadline,
Yeah, yeah.
or I'm not a type of person who just comes down here and writes every day. I just
Mhm.
don't. It's like when I need it, I just
Sure.
start writing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, and
That's
I'd also say kind of like the last couple albums were the kind of the same way for the cinematic stuff we did because we all knew going into them we were only gonna cut like 4 tunes, five
Five
tunes,
tunes,
something
five
like
tunes, yeah.
that. So it was kind of like, oh man, we're gonna do this in a couple of weeks, and then you just sit down and try and like write one song. Or in the last one, literally Al and I were there setting up for this session, and he was just like, yo, look, he was just getting sound, just getting the levels for the organ, and I wrote one of the songs right there. And then Al came in and got played the drums, so you just make sure that all the levels were cool. And really, that was the first song, and Krabs wasn't even there yet that day.
Right.
And then I
Exactly.
think we came up with another one too, like just doing that and that when we were just getting levels.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That raises a couple questions. So, like, going back to the 4 track, and then also you talked about the earlier records where you kind of limited yourself. I don't know if you limited, but they were,
Hmm.
EPs, like essentially, right? Um, why, or how does these sort of, I don't want to say limitations, but earlier technologies or parameters kind of change the direction? Like, why go back to a 4 track from, all these DAWs that we now have available and everything?
I think from part of it for me was just I just I was digging the sound that was coming off of I literally just plugged the guitar, like my Strat
Yeah.
directly into it, my bass guitar directly into it, drums, I just kind of record directly into it. And I dug the immediacy of it. Like there was no like, well, I'm gonna punch that in or that. It was like right from the beginning to the end, and a lot of it was just kind of stream of consciousness type of things.
Sure.
um and it just
Sound of it, the sound of it, like the sound of it is ridiculous. Like that's one thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's not about like, oh, it's not like lo-fi or anything like that. It just sounds amazing. Like,
yeah, so that just it inspires you, when you hear something back. It just I don't know, there's just something of it's just it's an inspiring tool. So
Yeah.
and then
so
and then if I'm feeling good about it, if I dig what's coming off the tape, I just kind of know that Neil and Kraz will as well, or hopefully, and then be inspired from what I'm writing, and obviously when we got in the studio, some things changed, um, because that's another thing how we work is like, yeah, I may come to at least I'd say in the past 10 years or more, like I'm very it's very loose. I'm not like concerned about like getting everything right or writing the whole song. It's like, man, if I come up with like an A section or an intro or oh, that might be a end up being a cool bridge or whatever, cool. Like, because I know Neil and Erica will fill in the rest, you know. So whereas
Yeah,
like
but
I
you
guess
kind of
when
had you basically had like Al had like kind of complete tunes, like complete A and B sections, if not like a bridge too. So like when we came and we would just start playing one, but then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I don't know how like one of them. Remember one of them
so
changed. Like
for
what
so
happened?
for instance, this is a really good so the song with Van Hunt, which
Okay.
is very like kind of like a Sly Stone kind of
Yeah,
feel, I guess, at least with what we're playing, and he took it in a kind of different direction. That song, when I brought to the right on tape there, it was an Afrobeat groove.
Okay.
So when
right.
we got in the studio, we'd cut a song, and then we're just like sitting around, like, okay, who has something next? So Neil's like, "Yo, man, what about like?" So we were all just pulling out our phones, listening to, and Neil's like, "What about that one groove?" It's like, all right, we listened to it, and we started playing it, and all was like immediately, Neil was just directing Kraz and myself, like, "Well, no, Al, play the groove like this." So he's air drumming over there, so I'm picking up on what he's telling me to do. Kraz, play this, and then he went over to the organ and just started playing, and all of a sudden he turned it into a Sly Stone kind of groove, you know. So I mean, like the so that is just an example of just changing. It morphed into what it was
Right,
going
right.
supposed to be.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like there has to be, and I guess after, I mean, obviously for your whole life, but also after 25 years or 30 years of being a band, however long it is, seems like a lot of it is just a level of trust and a lot of the songwriting, if I'm not mistaken, is it mostly generally start with a groove and build from there?
Man, again, it's always different, but the
It's
thing is,
always
it's
different.
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, we it's the trust that the three of us have in each other, but it's also the trust in the entire process.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I've been Neil knows I've been bugging on this thing lately, this it's like this quote that I've been really digging. It's like everything that you make never turns out to be what you imagined it in the beginning. So, it's just kind of like you just let go of like okay, yeah, I recorded this stuff on tape or whatever, and we had or everyone brings ideas, but that's all they are. And when we show up, you just have to like let go of what that was and just accept we're in a different environment now. This is a
Mhm.
different time
Sure.
and place, and just whatever however it's going to turn out, that's the
Yeah,
way it's supposed to be. And you just ride that. You just accept it.
especially when all three of us like can make a song on our own
Right.
without anyone literally needing anyone else. So that's a kind of wild thing. So it's not like, I mean, literally Al cuts bass, drums, guitar, keys, sings. Like he cuts. Kraz can do the same thing. I can do the same thing. So when you show up, like you say trust, but there's also like just respect. And
There you
I
go.
like it's one thing to trust them, but like when you just respect people and like what they do, that is, I don't know, that's just one of the biggest parts of just music, that you just respect other people and what they do. You know what
Sure.
I mean? And that's something that's blown me away. Like when Al's talking about like Teal Burbridge, like he'll show up and he'll like, no, Neil, you play bass. You're talking about like that's one of the greatest bass players on the planet. But like we just have an immense amount of love and respect for each other. So it's nothing has to do with like, "Ah, I can play this or I can't, it's just like
Right.
you respect people and what they do and just kind of what they um, I also think that's another thing for people like that create music. Like there's just an something else that people see in someone else, and it's an understanding when they know when people who are also they're attempting to create stuff. You just have a respect for that person because they're put kind of they're going for it.
Yeah.
Like at whatever level people are, it's just when people kind of say, I'm gonna try and create something and put it in the world. It's like right there, you just have a level of respect for him. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean it's such a, we're in a weird like in our age bracket. It used to be we got together to play and craft and even now part of my podcast is I take a jazz standard, I play it, I send my parts, I play bass and guitar, I send my part to the drummer and he brings back a track. I don't even give him any direction, do what you
Mhm.
and I think, a lot of the people who listen to this and my students as well, they don't know the inner workings, and it seems so unique to them that music could be crafted in that way. Um,
Yeah.
it's probably, I think, maybe you can elaborate. It seems to be like, for me, the biggest change in having the ability to create music is this idea of being able to file share. And even, we're all in three different states right now having a discussion.
It's it's it has changed. So I was saying, like, I've been I just got back to my place yesterday here in Brooklyn. I was in Massachusetts yesterday, coming from Al's place where we were working on an album. And but that's really wild that like Al's been doing the same thing, sending me these 4-track things. And but then we went up there and did a session, and we were writing, kind of working on stuff, and then everyone went away. Then Al just sends me a track. He's like, oh, he cut it with Ryan on guitar, where they just tracked this, but then he's sending it to me to cut bass
Right.
Right.
on the track. And
I
then there's like
mean,
another track where I cut drums and bass, and then Al's like playing it. It's kind of amazing, like what you can actually do. I also think, like you said, we're of a certain age. We're all of a certain age that, like, we came from the complete analog world, and I think there's just something about the um the Gen X, the generation where like we're just like in the flow of like innovation and things coming out, and we just like adapted, and everything that came out, it was just like we just roll with it, and there's no protest of like, this we were that generation that kind of benefited from just literally like riding the wave of like these people that were older but innovating all this stuff. But then we were like the tests, the subjects, and then the
Right.
people that push things even forward. And then we're creating the next wave of it. So I think all of this stuff, it just, I really think it comes so natural
yeah.
for
I,
for this. Specifically think this generation, like it, like, because we know everything. Like, we knew what it was not to have that stuff. We knew
Yeah.
what everyone could do just with a 8-bit 12-bit sampler that you could sample with for 12
Mhm.
seconds, to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in the infinity now. And then being able to work within any constraint. But it's just like, we know, like, we grew up with all the people that created with everything. Like, you're talking about standards, like literally cats just going into room, you're like, oh, that was the greatest album of all time, and they cut that in like literally one afternoon,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know to seeing the absurdity of like hair bands in the 80s. It was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
here, yo, they were in the studio for 1 year locked down in LA, in like at sunset, and you're just going like, what in the world, and then they also made the same amount of tunes that greatest, and they're also is equally as great, so we, like, I think we just we got to see the breadth of like the process of just making music. And
Yeah.
I mean, also, I mean, the funny thing is, man, we for a while now we've been bugging on the concept of file sharing and using Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. Just like, oh, I have this drum track and I'm gonna send it to you and this and that. To be honest, man, I mean, it's not. We've been doing that for a long time. It just hasn't been really talked about. I mean, we were talking the other day about what Stones tune were we talking about, Neil?
oh, uh,
Satisfaction.
no satisfaction. What? Yep.
Right,
Keith
right.
Richards. The fact that, like, when I found out he cut that on an acoustic guitar into a
On a
ta-
tape deck.
tape play, and it was so jacked, right? And it was like the
Right.
only. But that's the record. That is
Right.
on the album
Right, right. So he started,
in
use
a
little
hotel, right?
Yeah, yeah, tape player or tape recorder in a hotel with an acoustic guitar, and that's the guitar track that they built the song from. And
Right.
then when you watch like the if anyone's watched the Zeppelin documentary, Becoming Led Zeppelin, I think it's
Yeah.
called, right? And and they were talking about Led Zeppelin 2, how they were just like recording it when they were on tour in the States, just like flying around with tapes, and recording at different studios, and then and then they got back to to England, and Jimmy Page mixed it and added things to it. I mean, that kind of stuff was happening back in the day all the time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like people were sending tapes, like I mean, it's just maybe it's a little quicker now and more prevalent, but it's not there's really nothing new under the sun.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? And then the other thing with us, again, Neil's talking about the benefit of the time that we came up with, and same with you, Jay, is that we know what it sounds and feels like to play in a studio with people, right?
yeah.
Cool. So if someone sends me, hey, can you play drums or can you play guitar? Can you play something on this track? Like I can I can put myself mentally in the room with that person. You know what I'm saying? Because I know what it's like. You know what I mean? It's like what is the difference of putting on some headphones and being in the studio or just doing it here separately? For me, there's no difference because I just know how to make it work. You know
It,
what I'm
it,
saying? Like, sure, I could just record like 8 bars of a guitar thing and then like loop it and all, which a lot of people do, and that's probably where you start to see and hear and feel like the differences. Like, yeah, someone just kind of that's phoned in, or that's just a production choice. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But to me, it's just like there's no excuses. Like I can make anything sound like I've literally at the beginning of the pandemic, I mixed and partly recorded a big band album
Mm.
with everybody recording their parts in their bedrooms or wherever they were.
Right.
And you listen to that stuff, you would never know. You would
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah. It's
But
amazing.
because I know what
The sound stage is
the
supposed to be.
sound exactly, I know
It,
what it should sound like. I know
it's kind of
what it should
funny.
feel like.
It's kind of like if someone sent you a track and then but like again, like knowing what it's like to be in a room or what someone's going for. If someone's like, yo man, I want you to cut on this track, and they just do like, just say they put a ribbon mic on the drums in a room. I'm not gonna come back with some like keyboards with a gated reverb, right?
Right.
Or just some like 80s production. It's like, oh, I'm gonna make it sound like Rudy Van Gelder cut that piano. Just
Hmm.
even now we have all the tools, right? That like, oh, I can just pull up a piano plugin, but then you have the ability just like, oh, let me just set this reverb so I actually feel like I'm also playing in that room
Yeah.
with
Right.
someone, and when I'm tracking, not just tracking some dry piano to this like drum set that you're like, oh, you're hearing the room vibe in there.
Right.
Right. Right.
It's that same thing, like, but we all kind of know what it's like for all the years of like playing in clubs, the acoustics, the sonics of just playing in places.
And dynamics, all yeah, just
Yeah,
everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, but again, that's just if you're that's us. I'm 50. I'm about to be 52. Neil just turned 50.
yeah.
But if you're talking to some kids who are like 20 who have never had that experience, then that's what they're working from. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? But it's just different. But we understand. We
A-
just come from that era
But
and know how to apply it to this era.
Yeah.
and we were fortunate enough to actually go to studios or work, be in studios even when you're young, even when like probably at that time these things weren't popular like in the 80s, but you go into some studio, you be like, man, what is that big wood box in
Right.
there? And then someone's like, oh, like that's a plate reverb. You're like, well, what is it? And
Yeah. Totally.
now like the most famous plate reverbs were just in studios collecting dust throughout the 80s because people weren't using them. And
Right.
but we or you'd go in there and they'd use it and you were just like, wow. Or you say, what's that thing hanging, it's hanging from that massive wooden box with these springs, like we got to kind of see to see that and record on those things or to see the mics and
Mhm.
um
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like what you guys are talking about, like especially Alan, how you described, even when you're in a studio, very often you have your headsets on and you're baffled and you're in different rooms. And really, what is the difference so much, or except that you could see each other's faces occasionally, So
Right.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's like a lot of the guests I have on, like the Josh Redman, the more traditional players, Ron Carter, Buster Williams, these guys, you know,
Hmm.
they talk about exactly what the doing it the opposite. Hey, we just got together in the room and we each got paid $50 and we crafted this masterpiece. We had no
Yeah.
idea, you know.
It's like if you can, I think music is if you can just capture the vibe, that's
Right?
that's kind of what it's about. I mean, you talk about some like Joshua Redman. I mean, my goodness, but that's the kind of thing too. Like, you could also go into the studio, and there are some like you can be in a studio, and there's singers that like that. They just like the lights. It's everything is dark, and and they don't want to see the booth and
Hmm.
just literally listen to music. And I've been in sessions like that where um was it I could recorded one time at Avatar with Michelle and Dago cello, but like the piano was, Chris Dave was like behind me.
Right, right.
And when you had the cans on, like it's just some of those situations, even in the studio, like you might not have like a direct, you know,
Yeah, kind of sight.
sight line. And what is it about? Man, it's literally just about listening to what everyone else is doing. So
Right. Yeah. So if I could go back a little, just talk a little bit about because I think you guys are both multi-talented, of course, and you came up with not it was not a new concept, but a soul organ trio in the 90s, Why did you settle in on that or how did you settle in on that format?
So, okay. So when Neil and I were in this band Moon Boot Lover, like
Right.
in the early 90s, I remember one time it's kind of funny. We were at then she wasn't even my girlfriend yet, but my wife, who's whatever, we've been married 20, well, a long time. So around 94, I remember we were hanging out at her house because we would stay there like after the gig because the front of house guy um lived there who was her roommate. Anyway, I remember one time hanging out and we were just like listening to music and he had a tape of it was Grant Green. It was a Blue and Green,
yeah.
and we were just like listening to music, and that's the first time we had ever heard that. And so
Hmm.
this was like 94. And man, Neil and I literally could not stop. Like we just couldn't stop
That was in the
listening.
vans, like on all the
Yeah.
trips across the country, like that was just
Yep.
in the
So we would have like we would basically take a month off a year. It would be August. You remember that, Neil? So Neil and I would go back to Buffalo where we grew up, and we would just go down in the basement and just like play. And it was kind of like we all we were listening to was again Grant Green. So everything we were kind of grooving on is just Neil and I in the basement just playing like
yeah.
Grant Green type grooves, like.
That's
And
cool.
so that's kind of where that started, and then Moon Boot ended, and
But during at the end of that time, I
yes,
I got a
the
real
A100,
the A100,
right?
and that was the first time I'd ever touched a Hammond B3 was when I was like, I don't know, like it was like 18 or something like that.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
18, almost 19. That was
Wow.
like the first time I'd ever touched a Hammond organ. And
Right. So at
yeah,
that
so that was
point,
the first organ I got. Yeah.
yeah, 96, around 95, 96, Moon Boot Lover became a trio, an organ trio. But we were playing like rock stuff or whatever. But that was like the initial influence. And then Neil and I left Moon Boot in sometime in 96. And then by 98, I think it was. Well,
Yeah.
Neil, you were at Manhattan School of Music.
Yeah.
And then I moved out to San Diego. Kim and I moved out to San Diego because I got a gig playing with the Grey Boy All Stars. So there you go. There's another kind of, influence because, Grey Boy, again, not being an organ trio, but like had a lot of those influences, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I was like out there, man, and I just got kind of tired of being. That was like really the first time I'd been like a side man.
Mhm.
And I just kind of got tired. I love all those guys. We're still like great friends to this day. But so I remember being at the apartment in San Diego. I had my Strat with me, and I wrote Steppin' and Uncle Junior, Uncle Junior and Steppin'. And then I remember calling Neil. I'm like, "Yo, man, like I'm done with this. Let's start a band." And like I guess he was kind of like ready to bounce out of Manhattan School of Music. So we just had just the vibe. Oh, and the other thing, sorry, I don't want to go too long
That's
here,
great.
but the other thing is I remember being out at the High Sierra Music Festival with Carl. We were out there doing a Grey Boy All Stars hit, and Maceo was the headliner.
Mhm.
And it was, the High Sierra Music Festival. I don't know if you've ever been,
Never
but
been.
man, just hippie festival, real cool. But it was like it's dusty and muddy and just everything. And I was out in the crowd, way back out in the crowd behind everybody, and Macio's introduced, and the lights come up, they're really bright, and I just looked over to the right. You could see them walking on the stage, and they had like all this plywood down on the ground so that because it was muddy back there, but they walked up on stage. Maceo, Fred, Pee Wee, I mean the crew back then,
Sure.
man, black suits, white shirts, black tie. I mean, and from the stage, man, it was just so crispy. It was just, and it was such a contrast to everything else that was going on at that festival. You know what I mean? And that hit me. I was just, and what happened was the whole vibe of the place changed before they even played a note because they just walked on stage and they were just it was different. They were
Yeah.
in suits. And I remember that moment, I was like, when we start a band, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to wear suits,
Yeah.
and just because it just from the again, before they even played a note, it was like they demanded this respect, or not demanded, it just they got this respect. You know what I mean? It was just like people were dialed in, and and then to hear the music on top of that with them rocking these suits, and it was funky, and I was just like, man. And so that's kind of like the where the initial ideas of Soul Live came from, with the again with the Grant Green vibe, and then with the suits and just like and the groove and music, what I mean. And then obviously the way we brought it, we weren't playing just like really quiet, like Girl from Ipanema on like as an organ trio or whatever. We were like hitting hard, like
Banging. We were banging.
it was
Uh,
loud. I mean, we brought like
It was a
like
power. It was a power. We were because
it
we
was a
all come
power
from
trio.
like Hendrick. It was
Yes,
power. It was a power. We've always just thought about it was a power trio.
hmm.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, man. It raises a couple questions like or comments. Like I know as a jazz history professor, sometimes people ask me like, what should I listen to? How do I start? And I generally tell them, especially if they're a guitar player, I tell them Grant Green.
Wow,
Because
Man.
yeah.
the fact when you listen to him play the one like do 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 do,
Mhm.
which is actually a Soul Live tune that we did. What's the name of
Yeah.
that tune now? Do 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 do. That's just literally
Oh
his
yeah.
line that he does on the Grant Green live, but he plays that line from every beat on the upbeat. He'll start the line like on one and he'll start that line, or he'll start it on two, or he starts it on two and or three. Sometimes like it's the craziest thing that he had this one lick that he could play, and he could play it on three and start that line and have it tail over. And
Yeah.
I was just like, man, that's the one of the coldest things I've like ever heard anyone do, and especially like I'll listen to Grant Green, and one of his it was just fretted out, and he did it, and it just like every time he hits that note, it just goes, and
Yep.
I was
Yeah.
like, this
The
Jesus.
other thing about Grant Green that a lot of people don't do just miss out on completely, he is one of the illest rhythm guitar players ever.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
You listen to
Yeah.
those a lot of those live cuts when like Ronnie Foster or someone is soloing, and those are some long solos, and he's just
Yeah. Just for
but
5
it
minutes
is so
straight.
tight.
Just like
He
5 minutes
literally,
straight.
literally, it is just the craziest rhythm guitar
Oh,
playing
good.
ever,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, I think one thing with Green that I always found fascinating, like he's perfect almost in his imperfections. Sometimes like he'll play a line that's maybe a little dissonant,
Yep.
and it
Yep.
sounds a little off, but he'll play it 12 times until you
Well,
until you
Yeah.
realize it's the
Yeah.
right line, you know?
there
Uh,
you go, man. Exactly, man. Could just man, it's funny, man, when you kind of realize, Victor talks about this a lot, man, and a lot of people when you kind of know, man, there's no wrong notes, man. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like you're always it's like you're a half step away from the right note, and
yeah.
or like if you're if you hit a wrong lick, man, play it again. Play it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Play it. You
And
know
he
what I
Yeah.
mean?
would.
Like I
And
do
then
that
resolve,
all
and
the
then like
time, man. If I
maybe
mess
maybe
something up,
resolve
I
it.
do. Yeah.
Maybe resolve it. Maybe
Maybe
not. You
not.
know?
Maybe
Yeah.
not. But you know, I mean, if you're just like lay into it, man, like this is man, I'm meant to do that. You know what I mean? Like, you
That
know,
I
was
do it all the time.
up all the time.
yeah, it's so cool how he did that. I don't know if you must know his son. You ever meet Grant Green
Of
Jr.?
Oh
course, of
Yeah.
course.
man, yeah, we've
Yeah.
gotten to play with him like
Oh yeah.
several times, and
Yeah, he was a guest on the show. Really cool guy. But yeah, everything you mentioned, like Grant's rhythmic playing, and even his instrument itself. But even more to what I was trying to discuss is like there's an even though it's jazz, there's an accessibility, and it sounds like to me almost like you came to jazz in a way that a lot of people did of our age. But maybe I'm wrong. Like you have rock, like a rock background. Is that?
oh no, no,
Well,
like
everything.
our dad was like, I mean, before we were born, literally, like my parents would dance every night, like when we were in the
Oh,
womb, like to Ellington, Basie. And
yeah.
when we were born, like that was one of our things. Every night when we were kids, like we would dance, like to Henry Mancini, like, dude, I mean, yes, I got no, it was my dad, like he was a huge jazz buff and classical. So it's yeah. So it's
Oh,
like Wagner and all this stuff on this side, but it's like literally know every one of his albums that were in there. So yeah,
We grew up
we literally grew
listening.
up like just in that record case were just like basically some of the greatest jazz albums of all time. There wasn't one, what is this? There was not
mm,
one like, I mean, talking about Dexter Gordon to, I mean, just the greats. Because
That
that's the difference. Like our dad was born in 1937, so
sure.
like which is kind of just odd because he's like a generation older than like all of like the people's parents that are our age. So
Mhm.
um
I mean, he saw,
he,
man, look, he
he
saw, like, I remember one time he was telling me how, like, who was it, him and Uncle Irvin, when they went to go see Miles, and they're like walking down the street. This is in Buffalo. They're walking up the street to the club, and they hear all like this racket, all this like loud drums. And what in the world is going on? And they walk in, and it was like when Tony Williams, it was like his first tour with Miles.
Oh,
yeah
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So,
So,
nah, man,
or
like
like
he's, yeah,
or
well,
dad
said,
talking about when Charlie Parker walked into the
yep,
musicians club. Just yeah, I mean,
yep,
literally my dad's talking about like, oh yeah, when Charlie Parker walked in. And my
mm,
dad was a teenager, and him and his friends, they used to have like so this is what this had to be the
early
this
50s.
early 50s. And as teenagers they had like, well, it was like fraternity, but like clubs, like young men's clubs and stuff like that, and women, and they would have sock hops. He used to bring Duke Ellington to Buffalo when he was a teenager, and they'd have a sock hop. But I was like, what? Like that guy, like Duke Ellington, like that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
So we grew up listening to all that, but
yeah.
then we all but then obviously like Neil said, I mean, we were hanging with all our friends, so we were also listening to
Yeah.
Suicidal Tendencies,
Or and Bad
Fishbone,
Brains and
Public Enemy, Bad
Public
Brains.
Enemy.
like,
hip hop. Like I grew up on
yeah.
hip hop, like Run DMC to, and then just like so that was like that's my music. But then we have a older we have a brother who's 70
He just turned 70.
70,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he'll
yeah.
be 71 this year. So
And he
he's playing us James Brown, the Jackson 5,
I mean, he
all
saw
like
the Parliament Funkadelic when they were landing the mothership. You know what I mean? Like he
he
saw
saw
Donny
Donny
Hathaway.
Hathaway on the live tour. Literally, he played the bitter end, and then the next night he was in Buffalo.
Yeah,
Mm.
And so it's and then I remember I was 4 years old and he played me Bob Marley for the first time in 1980. And I remember I told him I was like, I don't like that music. And I remember he just
Ah,
said he looked at me and smiled. He was like, oh, you will. And now I mean, it's just some of the greatest. That
yeah,
music just changed my life. But like when you're a little kid hearing it for the first time, you're like what? I was like,
yeah,
what is this stuff? And the
mm.
beats
yeah.
on the. I mean,
Yeah, I remember when Rod brought home Off the Wall when it came out.
yep.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So
killer.
man,
Uh,
so that was man, so that's the cool thing. We just grew up with so many influences, you know. And honestly, man, when I was young, I was trying to be a jazz drummer. Like when I was like what, like 11 or 12, whatever, I'd go down to the black musicians club, the local, you know, and
Yeah.
they'd have like these like, sit-ins, and I'd sit in, man, and just like, oh man, those old cats would just give it to me, man. Oh man, they were just, but but then, we were when we're teenagers, I mean, we're just trying to have fun and just hang out and play music that was just kind of ours, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know,
and also I always tell people it's so funny that I'm like, how I ended up in instrumental bands when basically like
yeah,
me growing up, like it was the radio. I'm
right.
talking about like from Tears to Fears to Phil Collins, The Police, Van Halen, like that, like all vocal music. Like Michael Jackson was it for me growing up, and and Al have Men at Work, and like I
Yeah,
mean, and then when Al, then when Al got into Hendrix and like that, just like
yeah, that was a wrap.
because that was like old music to like, but literally like stuff the pop. That's what blows me away. Like people just don't know what pop music was like in the 80s when there's probably some of the greatest songwriters of all time. Like everyone was trying to be an individual. And
Hmm.
you listen to 80s
Hmm.
music, I mean the chords, the different keys guys would be going into, and just beautiful melodies, and they were all Duran Duran. I mean, you're talking about some of the most amazing musicians, and they still are, right? Like it wasn't like, oh no, there was no like these guys played. They were just amazing
Genesis, man.
technicians, but
Yeah,
wrote incredible songs and could sing. I mean, it was just what was that was a wild time. Like, but it's funny because like that was like the stuff I grew up on that I was just listening to, and then it's just kind of funny that like I end up playing like but I was also just studying piano I started with my uncle and then this great pianist Jim Beislein in Buffalo, where I would every week it's like, oh, I learned a standard, but so that's how I learned, like really learned, harmony, like for me, like standard, that's all about harmony, and then just the great
Sure.
writers who then is like the melody and just form, like the kind of
yeah,
standard form of tunes. And but then I'd leave there and I'm going to listen to the Smiths, like,
Hmm.
but then you realize like they all understood the art of songwriting. They knew the form of songwriting because all that came from kind of the same stuff. It all just kind of went
exactly.
back to these same things, whether it was like jazz or show tunes or
Hmm.
and stuff like or yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we were a lot of people don't realize, I think, because a lot of musicians I talk to are maybe even of an older generation, they talk about how blessed they were to grow up in the 60s and the 70s, you know. But I think really growing up in the 80s and 90s musically, there was really something to it. Like you mentioned, just the production and of pop songs and just how the individuality of these different writers. And when you turned on the radio, man, that like you could hear so much, you know. And then it sounds like you guys obviously had this jazz education as well. And it seems like you sort of alluded to you had formal training, both for formal lessons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
yeah, I yeah.
Neil more so than
Horrible
I, but
horrible
Yeah.
sight reader, but yeah,
yeah.
I can't sight read to save my life. But yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, look, man, I think the one of the most important lessons for me and probably for Neil as well, like when we were little kids, man, we were little kids, like in our house, we had the television, and we called it the TV room. It was in the front of the house.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, we had to walk through the living room where my father had the stereo set up. So like he'd be sitting in there listening to music, and you'd really have to think of how badly you wanted to go watch cartoons because he would inevitably stop us when we're walking through. He's like, "Hey,
He's like, sit
who?"
down.
He's like, "Who's playing piano?
Yeah,
Who's
yeah.
playing tenor? Who's playing drums? Who's playing bass?" So and and we'd have to sit there and we
But
like, a lot of
but
times get things wrong, but but then you start to pick, and you're talking about like he's listening to like Illinois Jet Cat or
Yeah.
something, and you're
Yeah.
like, who's playing, who's soloing here. But the great thing about it was just the most amazing ear training. Because you start to listen, you start to learn people's tones and like how they and how a band or an ensemble plays together. You know what I mean? Like you learn people's phrasing, like all this kind of stuff.
And but the also where he do that was in the car is when it's
Yeah.
because
Yep. Yes.
AM radio. So literally, come on, and Dad, he go, who says? So the funny thing is, I do this with my wife now, and I do it, but
Yeah.
she only has two people to guess from when it comes on. She literally has two people to guess from.
Multiple choice.
Miles or John Coltrane, right? And it's one of the funniest things because she'll kind of freeze up, and it's like they're talking about. Isn't that funny thing?
Yeah.
It's not like like is that Dex? Is that Cannonball? Is that like of course like alto? Like you're just thinking of all the alto players, all the is that
Yeah.
that's Wayne? Oh, that's Wayne. But she has Coltrane or Miles. It's funny. And so a joint comes out, and it'll be a sax, and I'm like, who's that? And she'll
That's
be like,
funny.
Coltrane, and I'm like, yes, because it's the only person But the other thing about that is, and this was the wild thing, it wasn't even that we would hear it would be like one note and be like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's not like we listen to it. Literally, he would do it was like what you. So that's the crazy thing, and like right, you could hear one note, and you're like, oh man, come on. You would say it because like you knew that record, like the sound, that reverb,
Sure.
like every little thing, like one of the, oh, that's Ray Charles, like like you just start to know that so that's the thing. I have a great ear, horrible
Right.
sight reader, but that was the thing. Like we have like it's a great ear, and that's how I was able to like
Develop it.
yes develop at music. But
So
yeah,
was he a musician as well? Is a musician as well?
No, not no, not no, no, not a professional musician. I mean,
like just like
he
a hop,
played
like playing
drums.
drums was
Yeah,
like his hobby. He would just go
yeah, yeah,
downstairs
yeah, yeah.
and then he
And
would literally put on like midnight special
yep,
on the stereo, and he would just go down there and play along to like midnight special. He's playing
yeah.
playing
No,
along to groove homes and stuff like
yep,
that. Yeah.
no, he could play. But that
Now
yeah,
he wasn't a
no,
Yeah, well, it sounds like, and also like Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo keeps coming up on the show recently. I think who did I have on? Spyro Jake.
yeah,
oh geez,
Yeah,
yeah, we yep.
and he was talking about Buffalo and how he kind of got it after he was in Europe and then he wound up back in Buffalo. So Buffalo has a scene, I guess, or had a
it
scene.
did,
It
it did.
did. So that was one of the things like when we were going, I mean, there were there were cats in Buffalo.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean I
And
mean,
not even that. It wasn't like I mean, talk about like we were like George Paleo. George Paleo. I mean, I straight up don't even know if I've seen any guitarist in my life that's better than George Paleo.
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and the crazy thing is now there's actually these clips of Al, what was the band? Their band, because like it's actually now like literally if you put in George Paleo, these like clips from the 80s or something show up
right,
on.
right.
I mean, and they're just playing at a bar in Buffalo or like some shows they did, and my goodness, that it was just a different time. Those 80s, like,
Yeah, no, we there.
but we were hanging with him. Like I'd
Yeah,
literally be like 11 years old, and like
Right.
we would just be like at like at his house, or we're like, we're just kicking it like
Yeah,
with these bad. But I was
monsters.
saying that was just a different thing, right? Because back then in the 80s, it was just like, oh yeah, someone was just like, our parents were teachers, school teachers, and that, that he's a musician, and
Mhm.
kids and house, and just played around town, taught lessons. It was just like, oh yeah, you did that, or you were that, you were that, you did
Right,
that,
right,
and it's like that was just a different thing, that like someone could be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a musician, or I'm gonna be an artist or photographer, and like that's what Buffalo was like. Oh yeah, we have pe-
yeah,
kids, their parents are photographer, and they're just, oh yeah, they like house children, everyone's going to school, which we know is just a different thing now. If like you choose to like be a musician or to be an artist, or it was
right,
just
right.
like, oh, you're a plumber, you're this, you're this, you're this. That person's parents is in banking. Like, I don't know. It was just like you just change,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
kind of change.
No, totally. I mean, yeah, it's it's awesome. I mean, and then like so eventually the band. Well, how did you come to meet? So there's the two of you, and obviously you can craft a lot of music, organ and drums. But how did you come to meet Eric? And then how did the band like sort of start to then really kind of take off?
So we met Eric actually back when Neil and I were in Moon Boot Lover.
Like
Mhm.
So
I graduated high school and then went
94,
in that
yeah.
summer, went on the road with them, and that summer met Eric. Kraz
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
both graduated high school that year, and we were playing up in Northampton, Mass. And
yeah.
as Kraz just comes out to the show.
Yep, yep. So he came out to the show, and I remember Kraz. He gave us a tape. It said it was a tape. It was like, oh, it's my band. It's Lettuce.
Lettuce, yeah.
So,
Sure, yeah.
so yeah,
So
so we
all the
let
Lettuce guys would come out, like Dyson, like everyone, and then
yeah,
we go play in Boston, and like their
Yeah.
were we
yeah.
opening up for their band, or
Nah, nah.
they were
Yeah,
opening up
yeah,
for
yeah.
us,
Yeah, because
or
remember we used to
whatever?
play with Fatbag. So
Yes, yeah, that
Fatbag
was,
So
was
yeah,
was
I know the yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
because
okay, yeah,
Dice was
you know, man. So
So I was in Berkeley at the
yeah,
time that they were. So Adam, I get to
yeah,
talk to him
so
quite a bit, and I used to go see Fatbag all the time. Yeah, yeah, we were you know, we were all in the same circle at that
yeah,
time.
yeah, you
Uh,
remember the scene, man,
yeah,
of Middle East and all
right,
you
right.
know, like all the joints and how well, no, I wouldn't even say House of Blues, but Mama Kin,
and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the
yeah,
joints. So
Uh,
anyway, so okay, so then, like I said, I was out in San Diego. Neil was at Manhattan School of Music, and I was like, man, let's start a band. And I was we want to keep it small and tight. And so Neil's like, man, he had a buddy at Manhattan School of Music, Nick Mancini, who's a
mm,
ridiculous, I mean, percussionist, vibraphonist.
sure.
So
who's
so
in LA, like Nick's out in LA, like has been there forever.
yeah. So Soul Live initially started as organ, vibes, and drums. And the
Hmm.
and actually and the vibes kind of came from the inspiration for that so happened was that when Neil was at Manhattan School of Music, you were working at HMV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I remember there were two albums that Neil hit me to back then. It was A Go Go
Oh yeah.
and the pound for pound, the Charlie Hunter and pound for pound was
Mhm.
it the something clowns joint, like Stefan was on that joint.
Yep. Stefan
And so,
Harris. Yeah.
yeah, and there were like vibes all over that. So man, when Neil was like, man, I know this vibes player, I was like, oh, that'll be killing. So we Neil and Kim and I moved to outside of Woodstock because that was a New York, because that was an area we lived in before and we were familiar with. We had this house that was built off of an old firehouse,
Mhm.
and so we had the recording studio in this massive
Massive
garage.
around. Yeah.
So we started recording with Nick and rehearsing, and Kim was like book some shows for us. Our
But Nick was
first,
still in the city.
yeah,
Like
Nick was
Kim,
still in
Al,
the
and I all
city,
lived at the house, so he would
right,
just kind of come up, like, but he had just finished his masters. That was
right.
what it was. He had just finished his masters, and so yeah, okay.
So our first gig was in Boston, or it was in JP
What was
at
it? Baby, what something studio, right? What was it? Something studio.
Bad Girl, no,
Bad Girl Studio.
Bad Girl
Bad Girl
Studios
Studio.
in JP. That was in '99, probably
Mhm.
February '99 was our first show. So we get there and it was us and oh man, who did we open for? Oh man, I can't remember. I wish I could remember the cats' names. Real cool dudes. But anyway, regardless, so we played, and it just so happened that Kraz heard that we were going to be in town playing, and it was either that or he was going to go to the Celtics game. So some cats were going to go, and he was like, "No, I'm gonna go
It's like
see
butt
Alan."
with butt. He's
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
going there with
yeah.
butts. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Kraz rolls through because he was living in JP at the time, so it was
Sure.
it was close by. So he showed up, and he sat in. Now, so he sat in, and that was cool. Now, what we found out was when we were driving up to the first gig with Nick, he tells us, "Man, I don't know if I can do
Do
this
this.
because I got this opportunity to play in the pit on Broadway."
Yeah.
So we
Like he
had all
just, it
these
was like
gigs
the, it was just
booked.
like the stability. Like he
No,
had
no, no,
never
no. I'm
just.
sorry. I'm sorry. It wasn't on the way up. It was maybe a week or two before because remember we started so at that point
Yeah.
I realized that like man, yeah, recording and probably playing live with vibes is kind of difficult, you know? It's a
Yeah.
Sure.
Like
difficult and
recording is like one thing
yeah,
because you could separate
right.
baffle like and be melt like he could, yeah. But
Exactly.
that
So at
gig,
that point, we Neil and I decided, "Oh, okay, we should have a guitar." So we started auditioning a few guitarists around the Woodstock area. And it wasn't really too
oh, I
happening.
forgot all
Yeah, you
about
remember
that,
that.
man.
Yeah, you
Oh
remember
my
that.
gosh, I
So
forgot about
Crash
that.
shows up. Crash shows up at the gig. He sits in. After the gig, we're talking, and he's like, "Man, I really
We
dig
did
what you
Fire
guys are."
Eater, right? Didn't we play
I
Fire
don't
Eater
know.
with Crash?
Maybe. Yeah, we did some. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. So we're talking. He's like, "Man, I really got dig what you guys are doing." Like, I was like, "Well, you know what, man? Well, it just so happens that this is our last gig with this dude, the first and last gig. So, would you mind, just kind of we have all these gigs booked. Would you mind filling in until we
Mm.
can find a guitarist?" And he was like,
Sure.
"Yeah, great." So he came down to our place. It was March. He
He
must
came
have
down
showed
on the
up March
first. He came
2nd.
down on the
On the
first.
first, right.
Yeah, yeah.
So March 2nd, we're just gonna run through all the tunes. We're showing them all our tunes, all four
But
or
you
five of
recorded.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And since I had the studio there, I said, well, I might as well just record it. So I just hit record, and that was Get Down, our first album, March
Yeah,
Yeah.
2nd,
so the
March
second
3rd.
and the third, we recorded the album.
And I remember we were sitting in our living room listening to the playback of stuff, and we were just like, damn, sounds like a band. And that was it.
And then we literally went from there to like Boston to the
Yep.
because Nick worked at the it was the old police horse stable that was now the courts, like tennis
Oh,
courts,
yeah, 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 yep,
that
yep,
massive place, and he got us in there, and that's where we took the photos for the first Get Down cover. Like we
yep,
just got in
Oh,
our
okay.
suits that night. I mean, literally, we were just like, all right, we're a band, and it was just
yep.
and like I said, Kim, we had gigs, we had like big shows lined up just from the years we were with Moonboo Lover, from like friends of ours, club owners that were like that, literally when we broke up with that band, they kind of would called us and were like, if you guys ever do anything again, like let just let us know. And that then cut to like a couple years later, Al like made those phone calls and was like, hey, we got something. They were like, cool. So it was immediately like, headlining a Thursday, a Friday night in a college town up in New Hampshire, or going out to Boulder to the Fox Theater and opening up. Remember, we opened up for like God Street Wine on a
Yeah,
weekend, and at that
yeah.
time they were literally like the biggest band in the country. They were just like
Yeah.
huge, and it was just like we. So it was kind of strange, but it was again that was that whole music scene, like it was more than just like it was just like a community of people and friends and bands and just own club owners and yeah, also again a different time, just a different time.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean you're right. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure we probably crossed paths around that time at some point.
I'm
But
sure.
yeah, but like yeah, in that mid 90s, late 90s in Boston, even New England, you could go and play instrumental music at places that you wouldn't necessarily think. And I remember I lived down the street from I'd go to Marco Benevento's house. I would play
Yeah. Yep.
him all the time. I haven't talked to him in years, but it'd be him and Adam and all those guys, and they were just always around. I think one of my favorite gigs we ever played was a house party. with
Yeah,
those
dude.
guys. Of all the gigs, I still remember that as being like it hit so hard,
Hmm.
and then the fat bad guys would come and play.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. So, then like I guess, and I don't want to keep you guys. I know you've been very
No,
generous with
no.
your time. I'm enjoying this conversation though.
Yeah.
Same here.
And so, Turn It Out, I think was kind of the album that really kind of broke, right? Like over 60,000, maybe 70,000 copies or something. And then you have all these guest stars, Schofield,
Oh,
O'Teal.
yeah.
Hmm.
I guess Sam was the first time you recorded with Sam. How did you, first of all, were you surprised by the success of that album? And also, how did you come to get like Schofield and O'Teal to work with you guys on that one?
Well, again, all that like O'Teal knew him since I was 18 years old when we were playing with
Oh,
Moon Boot Lover because
Yeah,
we
we did
we
gigs with
we did gigs
ARU.
at Aquarium Rescue Unit, and
yeah.
it again Kofi, O'Teal, Jimmy Herring, um,
What a great
I mean
band.
Sipes
Yep.
and Colonel Bru I mean, for us to just be these kids, like literally from that day, we Otio, Kofi, and I were brothers. They
Mhm.
just those guys just brought us in because they were like, you remind us of like what we were like when we were at Yates. So and it was just like that, like and it's been like that since that day back then. So I think it was one of those things like they always were seeing what we were doing and again we knew Derek back then like in those same times back in the 90s when Derek was just a little kid. Derek Truck, yeah, so like we've known Derek like that whole crew, and it's almost like everyone was just like, oh, what do you got, just waiting for like when we were gonna do
Hmm.
something next. So it was again there's just this support, and so the moment we had Soul Live going, like OTL just happened to, he was
Yeah.
just
So
in
OT was
town.
living in New York at the time because
Yeah.
that's when he got the Allman Brothers gig. So
Yes.
so he was living in New York, and then we were playing. We were
So
playing at Baby Jupiter a lot.
yeah.
So he just rolled through, and we happened to, we were recording, or I was recording. Yeah, we were recording the show that night. So so that ended up on the album. A couple of cuts, right? So Live and Jesus Children ended up on the album. And then with Schofield, again, you're
Same
talking
thing.
about another old connection. So our friend Marlon Browden, who's another incredible multi-instrumentalist, he after we met Marlon when Neil and I used to gig with Moon Boot, and we were doing shows with Screaming Headless Torsos, like Fuse and
Dean Bowman
Dean.
and the whole, yeah,
Yeah.
that whole crew. Yep.
So Marlon was playing drums with them at the time because like JoJo had split the band, and sometimes it was Gene Lake playing drums, or
Yeah.
Marlon, or what. Anyway, so Marlon used to come hang out at our house in Woodstock, because he'd be in town recording. He was recording with Jaco Pastoris's daughter at
Daughter.
the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we ended up playing in Boston as Soul Live years later, but early on in Soul Live, and we heard that Marlon was playing with Schofield. So we're like, oh man, we
And
got
that
to.
was on all the Go-Go stuff. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So
woo. So,
Marlon was
yeah.
killing that.
Like,
So I was like, man, if we can get in touch with Marlon, because all we want, I was like, man, we got to get Schofield to hear our band. You know what I mean? Like, and so got in touch with Marlon, and kind of, I guess they rolled through for a few minutes while we were on stage. It was like a big festival in Boston,
it was like the Boston World's Fair, and there was like one stage way
Right.
down the block at one end, the other stage was this end, and we're like, oh, we're way down here, and
Mhm.
it was the craziest thing, that like kind of all of a sudden like we're playing, and then like we look down and like we see Marlon, we're like, yo, Marlon, and then like Sko was next to
Yeah.
him, and we were just like, yo, like,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
was like, Sko was just like bopping,
Yep.
and literally watched the thing. And then like, so after we played, then I think they had to split because they basically were like on after we were all the way at
Right.
the other end. And then like right when we finished up, like we just ran down there, and watched them
Yeah.
play. And then we like were just kicking it with them for a
Yeah.
while after that. Yeah.
So then we were in the studio, kind of putting Turn It Out together, and I feel like I think there were a couple of releases of Turn It Out, and I think the first release of Turn It Out didn't have Skull on it.
No,
Because
yeah.
right, it didn't. And then we did like a re-release of it, and so we got Sko to come in and record on
Because
it.
that song wasn't on it. Yeah, the
Right,
new,
right,
yeah,
right.
that
So
song wasn't on. Yeah.
so the I was kind of tripping, man, because so Jay, you may or may I don't know how familiar you are with Sko's catalog, but
Oh yeah.
when I started playing guitar, when I was probably what, how old was I, Neil? Like
12,
11 or
yeah,
something
11,
like that.
12. Yeah, 11,
I
12.
remember I was a part of the what was it, the Columbia Record Club?
we
Yeah.
all
You
we
remember
all
that,
know
Jay?
that he's
We
that part.
you remember that
Yeah, we
everyone's
all know
jacking
that.
records off of them.
200
We
albums
all
for a penny.
Yeah, so I remember one album I got was Schofield's Time on My
My
Hands.
hands.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Man, that's one of my favorite albums. So there was a couple of tunes on there I remember like trying to learn on guitar, like, and so anyway, all of a sudden we're in the studio with Schofield, dude. I was like, I don't, I generally don't fanboy or just kind of like get lose my mind over stuff, but that was definitely a moment for me. Like I was kind of tripping, you know what I
And
mean? Like,
and
Right.
here was the other crazy thing when he walked in the studio. Like, I mean, John is like the sweetest. It's one
mhm.
of those crazy things. This was just like even through all these years, there have been so many of these experiences. Like, I never thought in my life I'd ever meet Maceo or meet.
Mhm.
I mean, you just go down the list: Fred Wesley, John Scofield, just and you name it. You just never like these were people that were on these things. They were on records. They were. It's just something you. So to meet them, I mean, just the most incredible person, And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm here, let's do the song, and I'm out. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was really surreal. He showed up with charts of my song that because we're just like, oh, here's the song, we send it to him, but
Mhm.
and wrote out, not even just wrote the like complete the harmony. Like he's just like, oh, I'm gonna just take the liberty to just write this harmony. He wrote, and we were all just like, oh, that's the most. It
Yeah.
was just
But that's cool. I mean, it seems also
phenomenal.
like at that time and a little before, he was looking for a sound that was similar to what you guys were doing with the Go-Go records and such. So it was
Oh man, I
Oh, that
look.
was before because again, that was 2 years, like the 2 years before when I was at. And then one of the jokes I told him, I always say, I was like, John, I was like, man, I want my cut from a go-go because like I probably sold you more albums when I was working at HMV Records because
yeah,
because I was on the world scene in jazz floor, the
sure.
second floor on 72nd Street,
Yeah, yeah.
and there were a couple albums I had on rotation, um, and one was the Brian Blade when he like
The
when
Fellowship.
the Fellowship when no with that those all came out like at the same time, and a go-go came out, so literally those two albums were not. I would play one album, then the next one came out, I'd play it, and
Right.
anyone who walked in that room was like, what I was
Going
like,
on here.
I was like, and sold, so I was slinging those albums out of there just because. Wow. And they were just amazing. Those albums were amazing. Just
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I mean, and then another collaboration you had with and I think it's probably like your most downloaded tune, if that means anything, but like the Dave Matthews Joyful Girl.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, man.
I mean,
that was so cool because I got, and that's kind of a funny thing, right? Ani is from Buffalo.
Buffalo. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just funny because like we knew each other just from like
Dude.
just that whole Buffalo scene when we were like kids, but like
Yep.
she knew about us and everyone, playing different bars, and it's not like we hung out with Ani, but like,
Everyone knew each
yeah,
other,
but
you
like
know.
literally you could be at Nietzsche's and like we'd be there playing, or and
Yeah.
she'd be in the same, or maybe some night you're just hanging out there. But again, we were little kids hanging out in bars, but like, oh, Ani would just walk in, and but so that was a cool thing. It's like she just knew us. So like even when that thing but anyway, I had an old girlfriend, and she played that song from Ani DeFranco. That song blew my mind. And one of the coolest things was like, I was like, when we went like, and then we had been touring and playing with Dave, and I was like, man, it would be so. I heard it, and then I kind of, made the song a groove,
Hmm.
like, oh, like what is it, it's basically kind of like the 6/4 thing or whatever. um and or 4/6, whatever way you want to say. And oh yeah, 6/4. And then and I was just like, oh, if he sings these lyrics, but like just sings Ani's lyrics, I was like, oh, they'd be so killing. But he didn't. So he changed it. And it was cool. One of the coolest things why he did it, because he had just had his daughters. He had
Yeah.
just had like his twins. And so it just like that song, it just kind of moved him. And that was really cool. But it's a funny thing because we did it. How many times did we do it live with him where he came up with it?
Yeah, yeah, in
Was it one?
Portland and
He did it
no,
a
it's
couple
definitely a
times,
couple times.
but
Yeah,
one time,
in
because people
Portland.
would know these lyrics of the Ani DeFranco song. And one time he came out, was that at Madison Square Garden?
No, no, it's in Portland
It was in
at the
Portland.
yeah, yeah, in Oregon,
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon.
And he sang Ani's lyrics like, I do it for the joy it brings cause I'm a joyful girl. And like the whole place screamed because he said, because he changed it to like, cause you're a joyful girl, like
Right, right.
about his daughters. He changed that one thing. But there's another part of it this is so cool. So we get a call from Ani's people,
Mm.
and she cut us a big check because that song was in a movie, in like a Denzel Washington movie. And
Right.
like literally like he walks into some bar and it's it's like on in the bar. And she we didn't even know, but I think our parents saw the movie and then they
Right, right.
told us about, like, we didn't even know. But one of the wildest things is that she called us and literally cut us a check because she knew we would net like we weren't gonna make any money
Yeah.
Wow.
from
That's
that. Like
incredible.
I'm talking about like,
Didn't have to do
man,
that.
just the most.
Right.
She is just one of the most solid, incredible human beings on planet. Like no one. It's like you didn't even have to do. Like we would have been fine without. People are like, oh, we heard that's your version of that in the movie, and she, man, like it's
Yeah.
they're just yeah. It's like never surprising like how how special like people are. It's just always. It's like you just kind of know it's like this. So
Right. But it was such an interesting collaboration. And for me, it's beautiful because it's like three of my favorite artists.
Mm,
Like Ani is like endlessly fast. I've never gotten a chance to speak with her. One day I hope. But she's
man.
endlessly fascinating to me. And then, Dave Matthews, he was such a monumental figure in that time. And then you
Yep.
got it's like and then I'm like, and then of all songs, he's singing Joyful, like it
yeah,
could
I
have been any
know
one
it
of her
was
songs.
it was really wild, man. But that's just like how Dave is. It wasn't like, I don't know. He was just like, yeah, like, yep.
Yeah.
He was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna change this one. But then he kind of told us how that song hit him, and just when he had his daughters, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's amazing. He's
Oh, cool,
amazing.
man. I'm glad you told me because I was always like, why of all Ani's songs? First
Yeah.
off, it's so unique to pick an Ani DeFranco song and then to pick that one. That's cool. And then I'll start wrapping it up a little. But the other record I really found very interesting was, of course, the Beatles, Rubber Soul Live. I mean, they're all great records, but that one, I mean, you could have picked any album to cover, and you picked Beatles, and
E- But
Well, it's
there's the
funny, man.
coolest story behind this. There was never ever a talk of cutting a Beatles album. It was supposed to be a British invasion album.
Right, right.
And um and it was just the strangest thing because until this day, the funniest thing is it still makes more sense that we would do a British invasion now because there like literally there's like Oregon all over
Yeah, sure.
British invasion stuff and so many bands that it's literally sounds like so like we sound like them or
Yeah.
and the Beatles is like the least of any of the bands from the British invasion that would make sense for us to do or would be the
Right. So
easiest thing for us to
yeah.
do.
Right.
Like 10 days after, like and all the like there, there's just so much stuff. All traffic. I mean, we can just go there is but what ended up happening, so I'm writing all these we started writing all these lists like 10 days after all this stuff and boom, sending it around. And then like a Beatles song got on the list. So like Crash
Well,
put a Beatles. So one of you guys put a Beatles song. But then I was just like, wait, man, if like you're gonna do that Beatles song. I was like, no, we got to do this. And then it was like, and then I think that's what was happening. It was like, well, if we do that Beatles song, like you'd have to do this one. So all of a sudden, this list just oddly was dominated by Beatles tunes.
Right. And then the interesting thing is that
And
at that time, the what was that? It was like this book, the like the all it was like the Beatles song book came out. It was just like
Yeah.
it was just like it was like the real book for the Beatles or whatever.
and
Or
Capitol put out the entire Beatles box set.
right,
It was the
exactly.
strangest thing. And we were driving out of the city, so Kraz like literally had the books, and it was crazy because it had all of the lyrics.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time I mean, when we were up there like reading the lyrics, we were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like this dude's talking about killing his girlfriend. Like, I mean, it was like so out, like something we were reading these lyrics and like what the songs were. So we had Kraz had the box set, the
Right.
book, and then as we were leaving the city, I remember that we were on Houston and we looked up and we were like, "I don't believe this."
No, that was before.
Yeah, no, that's when we were heading up to record, and this was one of the craziest things, right? Because you remember the old right? Am I confusing with time? Because I thought we were
Yeah, yeah. No,
leaving
no,
the city,
no, no.
or
So
is that
check it.
after we cut
That
it?
was
Then
after
okay,
because
oh, because we go up and cut this,
we
right?
go we record the album, and which was really interesting, and then trying to pick songs, we like had a list, right?
We had,
And you're like, oh, this is gonna
and
be great.
we just
And
recorded. We just like were because literally we would listen to a song and then say like, oh, okay, like you play that. Okay, I'll play this part, and then we would just record, and
right,
then
but
if we were like, that didn't work out,
well,
we were like,
because
this
what
song
we
isn't working out, we would just go
discovered.
to another song.
Right. What we discovered though is like a lot of these Beatles tunes that you're like, this would be a great tune to record. You're like, wow, there's nothing going on melodically in terms
Yeah.
of the vocal. It was very just like, it'd just be like
You
da
are
da
na, na,
da
na,
da da da
na,
da. And you're just like,
na,
what are you
na,
gonna just
like that doesn't
so a
work.
lot of tunes. So it ended up being kind of tough, like to cut tunes out because we couldn't really make them interesting as instrumentals, right?
Right.
So anyway, so we record the album, we put it out, and the cool thing was, what was interesting, this was when iTunes was still a thing, you know what I mean, before Apple Music, but iTunes. Um, we the Rubber Soul I've got up on iTunes and was doing really well because the Beatles were not on it. Remember at that
Right, right.
time you couldn't
Smart.
find.
Yeah.
So if you went in and typed in Eleanor Rigby, like it
Right.
was like obviously you probably find the Booker T and the MGs or whatever, but like for us, like it just the timing worked out because it was a new release
And
and
it
it just
shot up to like number one. It was like number one on the jazz thing, but
it
this
was
Beatles thing, it was
crazy.
weird. Like it
But
was
what Neil
crazy.
was then, but then when Apple Records did the deal with Apple, and finally the Beatles were going to be on iTunes,
It was literally like
that was
that.
when it went crazy
But
for
it
us as well.
happened like probably a couple weeks after. So one of the
Yeah,
weirdest
yeah,
things was, if you remember, all the iTunes had one of their
Yeah.
big things about Apple marketing. It was just silhouettes of
yep,
nobody, of just
yep.
people dancing, we were on Houston, and we looked up. It was just a white billboard, and it was the four of their silhouettes, and it was the first time ever any Apple ever did a ad, and you were like, it was the Beatles, and it was just their silhouettes. It doesn't matter who you are in the world. You're like,
Yeah.
that's and we just said, oh my goodness, the Beatles are on Apple Music, and so then that was literally the biggest thing that had happened in the
Right.
world, that they were on it,
Yeah.
and then people are also
Finding
seeing
us
our
by
album because it was
just by
nuts.
because
Like
there was
it
tons
was
of people
just
just looking for Beatles stuff.
it
Wow.
was
And
yeah.
when you did this, you had that wasn't your
Oh,
intent in any way,
we
right?
were yeah. It was like we just
Picked a cool
yeah.
album.
Again, like all the stuff we do, there's no like, oh, okay, let's
Yeah.
do this now. We're gonna market this, and we're gonna
Yeah.
like we just again. It started off as a British Invasion album. Until this day, I'm just like, oh man, like I listen to all these 10 years after songs, and I'm like, I can't believe we still haven't even
It's
played
not.
these songs once, or you know, done some Steve Winwood's. Like, I mean, there's just so many songs. And I bet you if we looked at that list, there's just all these killing tunes. Like, because we had like working on that was really it was so much more challenging than you thought it would. You thought it'd be easy. Oh, let's play these beat songs. It was super challenging
Mm,
when you don't have a singer.
right, right. And I think I remember the book you're talking. Was it the big white book that had
Yes.
every? I'm looking at it here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
Yo, that book is incredible. All the
right.
lyrics and I
It's
mean,
so
and
Mind
then the
blowing.
amount of tunes that are
Yeah.
you're looking at.
It's like an
right.
encyclopedia of
Yeah,
music.
everything. Yeah, it's
Crazy.
incredible.
But then again, to have that capital box set, so it's like anything we looked at, any song, we just popped in the CD and like played the track. And yeah, it was just crazy that both of those things came out. Um,
Wow, that's really cool. So any desires of doing another similar type of a record?
Again, it would be, but now like what we do, I especially doing the cinematic stuff and just how things are now. What I love is like I'll see bands and like how friends and they're just like, hey, we dropped a song.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it is now.
And then
Yeah,
they might drop three songs, and that's an EP. The EP doesn't have to be five, six. Like
but
it
different.
would be so cool that we can just one day say like, "Yo, let's just cut this. Let's learn this song and play it, and then just like we could just cut it." I think there's just some like there are just some tunes I think it'd be cool. But again, it's just one of those things that it always just naturally happens, and it just seems to work out the way like there was none of our albums ever had anything like we're gonna do this, we're gonna get Schofield on it, we're gonna get Dave. It was literally like just
Just happens.
crazy idea, and I'd be like, oh, maybe we should try and so yeah, there's no doubt. Like we don't even know what the next. I mean, that's the cool thing. Like this album hasn't even come out yet,
Right,
right?
right.
Like
Right.
Yeah.
who
No, it's
knows?
funny because if you're just in the moment and you're on the scene, shit just happens sometimes. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's pretty remarkable, you know. And I mean, I've walked onto gigs and like, oh, I couldn't believe like some of the guys I'm playing with, and
yeah.
it's just somewhat random almost, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wild because even the two albums we did before the cinematics, like that was something that we had constantly been like, oh, maybe after we did it, we're like, oh, since it was so short, we're like, oh, we'll do a volume two, but it wasn't like we're gonna do it next year. And how many years was it before we
It
did
was like
volume?
5 years. I
Yeah,
don't know.
before the volume two came out, even though I even remember after volume one came out, like Kim would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, how about like it was like how so should we schedule to do volume two? And we were all just like
Yeah.
we're like, man, we just cut an album like a few months ago. So it's not like, oh, next year. We were all just kind of like, yo, we cut that album. But
Yeah.
like Japan, it was like the mud. Like they were like, we want you over here to do this, but we really want to just do another album so they could.
Right, right.
It's like, look at us. We're like 5 years later. We cut the second one.
Hmm.
It's, it's
Well, that's funny. I would ask
yeah, so it seems like nothing could sway us to like do this or do this or
right, right.
like it's just strange. Oh,
Yeah.
but the other thing about the cinematics was just like especially for Al, like at that time, he had his label and he was doing a lot of vinyl, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
that
Yeah.
was really the spark for that Spark, I forgot about our album Spark, right? Similar type of thing, but because it was one of those things that there was this conscious decision, and it was about like the fidelity of the album and how albums actually used to be made and why they were actually made in a particular order. Like people don't know like why the slow song is on at the end of a song or
Yeah.
why there are only a certain amount of songs on it and then Al was just teaching me all this stuff like, oh, it's literally about the bass extension and what happens on the vinyl. Like,
Mhm.
you cut 10 songs on one side of an album, it's going to sound paper thin.
Sure. Right.
Well,
Right.
depending
So,
on how long they are, but yeah. Hmm.
oh, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Right, right.
Exactly.
Uh,
Um, and so that was a big part about it, like this challenge of like, yo, and not but I also think we did that with the album Spark, where with that album was like there aren't many songs, and we
Four.
weren't lim. How many?
Four.
Four tunes on Spark. Wow,
Hmm.
because that was conscious of like the what label were we kind of inspired?
CTI.
What's that?
CTI.
Oh, the CTI stuff.
oh, yeah.
Because on that album we're just playing like these long songs, and we weren't. There was again that was more just like playing.
Yeah.
and
Right.
creating a vibe. And we were like, okay, this song has to be 8 minutes. Like it was just like we just cut a song and it was this long. To not like to where the cinematic stuff, it's more like, oh, let's do these, kind of
Crafted.
crafted things. Yeah, it's like everything just seems it just happens to be what it is at the time, what we're
That's cool. So it's like it's just this openness to trying new things. And
yeah.
I mean, I would ask you what's next, but it sounds like
Oh,
We don't know.
no.
no, oh yeah. Don't yeah, that's the thing. It's like but we never it's like we literally never think about that.
Yeah.
Just like like this album should have never happened
Right.
because it was not like, oh, we want to do this type of album and record Van Hunt and record in Iceland. Like it was just yeah, I think and I for whatever reason I think that the timing all it's just kind of it's always right, it
Hmm.
was just meant to be. So
Mm. Yeah. Do you think this is like that's just a product of maybe something bigger than us, or is it just
yeah,
something
oh
that we're,
yes, yep,
yeah,
yep,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
cool.
'Cause, let's- and I tell we don't create anything.
Yeah.
Like in the scientists shows, like human beings we're just antennas. Like
Yep.
we don't create music. It exists in the universe, right? We can't create a sine wave. That was the first thing that was created in this universe. Like we just right you just we play these things that like wield those like
Yeah. Exactly.
we just receive stuff. That's how I believe it.
I
You
mean,
just
it's
receive stuff.
it's like that what is it that there's a quote about Bob Dylan and it was just like you know about songwriting, and it's just like songwriting is like fishing in a stream. And, you just like cast your line and you just the eye you just you're
The fish are
if
there.
you're
The fish are
the fish
there,
are
right?
there, and it was like Bob Dylan. There was like, well, you just don't want to be downstream from Bob Dylan or upstream or whatever,
Right,
you
right,
just
right.
grab everything. But I mean, essentially, man, I always feel like, man, it's like I don't write songs, I mean, it's just like you just happen if you're in a position where you're just open to,
Yeah.
receiving, things, and that's like kind of that's what like well, yeah, you can practice your instrument and all this kind of stuff, but like it's just about being ready for when they come in.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And
And I
that
think and that's the thing. It's like it's the same thing like with people like some musicians they're just players. They don't write
right,
music,
right.
But again, they practice and it's like I mean any scenario, boom, they're ready for sheet music this or orchestra or jazz or and those cats blow me away because they can just execute. And I think it's for the same thing that people who write songs. Like if you just like I've been writing. I used to write like just serious jazz tunes when I was like 12 years old that
Mm.
I could lay on anyone today and they would be like, man, like just killing tunes for either like a septet or whatever, whatever a quartet, septet, and or quintet. And and I was writing series tunes because at that time I was just like studying standards, or playing standards.
Mhm.
So and I think that's the thing. Like when you just do that, it's that same thing. Like I don't have to come down here and write songs every day. Like my mind has been at that since I was about 11, 10 years old.
Mm.
Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's nonstop in my head, right? So I don't have to come down here. One of my favorite things I do now, like if something really just catches me like throughout the day, I just my phone and if you see my notes in my phone of me
yeah,
humming
yeah, yeah.
songs, and now like I've been playing bass for the past uh couple years, and that's all I play is bass.
Nice.
All I play is bass. So I see that. Come on, man, that GNL. I've wanted that GNL right there for a very long time.
Mm.
Um,
That's a 2000. I think I got no, I got this in the 90s. This one.
oh, it's that's the two. Oh yeah, so that's the active, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah, but the coolest thing is like you can just run it passive and it
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
everything still yeah
Yeah.
that is the one that actual color. This is the one I wanted because like I first got a jazz and I had a jazz and then I got this Jack Cassidy and then finally I was like I gotta get a P because everyone and I'm like so just the class but those pickups I was like literally that was going to be the second bass I wanted to get,
yeah.
just because those pickups, it's literally like a P, but then the position, but it's like you can get that sound,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that extra boom, yeah, the switch,
But
man,
it's heavy though.
that switch. Whenever I saw that video, the cats hit the switch, you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
It's like
I
12
want,
pounds of bass. So
yeah, yeah,
but that's cool. Yeah, I could talk. I mean, I'm an upright player, and
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, bass is my thing, my space. But yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
dude,
that was my first good bass that I bought, and I've had a 65 jazz bass
ooh,
and a 73 P bass. But
oof.
still, when I plug this one in, it's something weird happens, you know.
But the coolest thing when I checked out the history, and it literally was like Leo was like
Mhm.
that was it.
That's
Everything
official.
he put into Fender, he was like, this is the best bass
Yeah.
he ever made, you know. And it's just a cool thing about that it's just not like, oh, these are some other cats that made this. That was like
And they just went out
the
of business, you know.
bridge.
They're just closed shop.
Shoot.
Just
Oh man. That means these things are about to shoot up in
they're gonna
price.
be
Ah.
I'll keep an eye out for it. I used to be a dealer for them too, years ago. Because
Trust me, I'm on, dude. I have them saved on Reverb, dude. Like I have a bunch of those on Reverb saved. Yeah, man. Like
do
it's
it,
gonna
man.
happen. I'm gonna do it because
Do
that
it.
bass is just. I just want
Yeah,
to know what it's. I
yeah.
want to know what that, dude. As soon as I got on here, I was just staring at that. I was like,
You're looking at that
yeah,
one.
you know what's up.
I have others here. I didn't. It's funny. I position different guitars depending on what.
Yeah.
I picked the right one for you, I guess.
Yeah, I've been eyeing that the whole time,
I'm
man.
staring at a six-string carbon over here, and the other. Yeah.
Whoa.
All right, I could geek out on that stuff all day, man. So, just to wrap things up, I guess, going on tour for this in support of the record, I would imagine, right?
No.
No,
Nope.
nothing.
No.
We
Like
got
that
we have a the album release show,
release.
Okay.
which kind of inspired the making of the album in a way. That's out in Crested Butte on January 30th, and then we got a couple of shows in April down in
Yeah.
Philly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm not far from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
And that's at
that the
those.
Ardmore.
Oh
At
yeah,
the
the art.
Ardmore.
So
Yeah.
those are it's kind of wild. Those are like the kind of dates we've been doing for the past few years. Like do this Ardmore because it's kind of like easy, and it's a cool town. The venue is amazing. So just
Right.
to go there for like 2 days, like that's kind of other thing we've been on. Also, is like even with that Blue Note run we did. There's just a difference for now. Like if we roll somewhere and like we just do 2 days at a place,
Yeah.
versus the
Not
kind
the
of
hustle.
fly in, fly out, or at least two. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
So
hustle
the
slowed down.
Ardmore, yeah. So to have everyone, yeah, check out the Ardmore shows that'll be coming up as well.
Okay. And it's all on the website. So anyone who's interested,
Yeah,
to go check that out. Guys, it was a real pleasure talking to you.
man,
Yeah,
dude,
same
such a
here,
pleasure
Jay.
to kick it with you, man.
Yeah, man. I enjoy the music, everything, and hopefully
Oh, dude.
we'll meet someday in person.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. If you can really come down to Ardmore, that'd be awesome. We'll be able to kick it.
Only if you play the space.
You dude, I'm telling you, man. One of these days, like, and I even have some friends that are like, "You gonna play bass?" Like, I have a friend of mine who's also egging me on to play bass for years. This chef, and he was like, "Are you gonna play bass at the Blue Note shows?" And I was like, they haven't heard me play bass yet, or anything. So I'm like, I just can't roll there and play bass. But
Why not?
the funny thing is, like, I could play bass on an entire Soulive gig.
Yep.
If I literally and that was one thing that was bugging me out because that was the one thing that stopped me from picking up bass. It was like I'll never be able to play what I can play, and do this
Right.
on a bass. It was be frustrating. I'm like, I know this will be like 10 years or 12 years and I can literally pick it up.
Yeah. Plus, you've had the privilege of playing with one of the best there is, right?
Yeah. And it's just man, but that's kind of bugging me out. Like I can just play the bass lines. I just can figure it out, and then I'm like, oh man. I'm like, okay.
That's the job, Melly. Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day, man.
You as well.
You too, Jay.
All right, I'll let you know when
Take
it's
care,
coming
Jay.
out. All right.
All right.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
Take care.
All right, man.
Like.